The West Africa is breaking down. On the 26th of July 2023, the Niger military corps deposed the president of the Republic, Mohamed Bazoum, taking power over the entire country. What does China and Russia have to do with it? This is just the latest coup after a series in Sahel, such as Guinea, Mali, Sudan, and Burkina Faso. They were all under French control, as was Niger. Russia has sent the Wagner Group to fight Islamic terrorism along the Niger army. China helped Niger economically, loaning money and building infrastructure. Are Russia and China the new French? What are France and Europe risking with this coup d'etat? What will be the role of the US? The aftermath of a war in Africa could ease the jihadist militias waiting in the shadows. A series of problems which affected the Nigerian population led to the coup. Government corruption and incompetence, the rising cost of living, and the most important, the conflict with the Islamist terrorist group. However, there was already an anti-colonialist sentiment towards the French, reinforced by the presence of the Russians' mercenary agency Wagner Group and its disinformation campaigns wherever the group operated. Last, but not least, the Niger military were seeing lost their power. The President Mohamed Bazoum had announced the dismissal of Presidential Guard General Chiani a few days before the coup. There were double demonstrations, for and against the putschists, and a lot of citizens were in front of the French embassy with the flags of Russia. Uranium is a very important raw material, especially useful for fueling nuclear power plants. Niger is among the main uranium reserves in the world, accounting for almost 5% of world production, and is also the main supplier of uranium to the EU. 20% of the uranium for French nuclear power plants comes from Niger, and the energy produced is sold to Europe. This geopolitical crisis isn't just worrying Macron. Niger is a fundamental stopover for migrants who dreaming Europe. Because of its central position and the instability of alternative routes, it is considered the main hub for the control of migratory flows arriving from West Africa. Nowadays, France regulates this flow, but with a coup, someone could take its place, using the migrant issue to blackmail the whole of Europe. China has invested heavily in several African countries, such as $200 billion per year, loaning money at low rates, and building infrastructure for the country, like hospitals, schools, railways, although the largest investments have been made in mining and oil extraction facilities. Dealing with Niger government, the Chinese oil company PetroChina is part of the construction of the Soraz refinery, located about 400 kilometers away of Zinder, the third largest city in the country. The refinery has a capacity of 20,000 barrels per day, using for internal fuel market, and other 6,050 barrels per day for exports to border countries such as Mali, Burkina Faso, and Benin. PetroChina holds 60% stake of the company. In September 2019, PetroChina has deal another agreement of the construction of the pipeline between the Agadem field and the Beninese port city of Cotonou, a $4 billion investment. This is the second largest oil pipeline in Africa, and it is designed to carry 90,000 barrels per day. PetroChina holds the majority of the company. Speaking of uranium, in 2007, China National Nuclear Corporation has been construction partner of the Azalik uranium mine. CNNC holds 37.2% of the project, and a further 24.8% is owned by Zisexjoy Invest, a Chinese investment entity. Furthermore, Exim Bank, a Chinese state-owned bank, lent $90 million to support the project in 2009. The mine has an estimated annual production capacity of 700 tons out of a total reserve of 11,227 tons. We surely know China is not a philanthropist. Russia has helped Niger and neighboring countries supplying military forces, sending the Wagner Group to help against the jihadist advance, filling the void left by the French troops. So Putin is seen by the people as an institution, escalating the anti-Western sentiment that was already underpinning it. Even thought it seems Putin take distance from this coup, and consequently, also by the decisions of the Wagner Group. it is clear that Russia wants to replace France, and it does so with the help of disinformation campaigns wherever the group of mercenaries has operated. The people of Niger are tired of being exploited by colonizing France, so they look to Russia and China as pro-liberation partners, but they risk falling into a trap. Colonization 2.0. Nigeria has been influencing West Africa since the 1960s. As a matter of fact, it is the main part of ECOWAS. It initially cut off electricity supplies to Niger, on which it depends for 70%, and threatened to intervene militarily, also in Mali and Burkina Faso, to dismiss the various coups. In Mali and Burkina Faso, the Wagner Group helped the population and their respective armies against the jihadist threat. The French army was initially well received by public opinion, but after the failure of the war against ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Boko Haram, which broke out in 2015, in these countries Russia is practically seen as Che Guevara. As a result, some African countries have not condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine at the UN. The French army, which was supposed to guarantee protection, first left Mali, and then Burkina Faso, who support the coup plotters of Niger and threaten to join them if necessary. Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, a Russian oligarch, former Putin's chef and leader of the Wagner Group, was involved in a plane crash on 23 August 2023, killing all 10 people. The Embraer Legacy 600 business jet was the plane exploded in Tver Oblast north of Moscow. It's not clear the presence of explosive device, or if it went down by Russia's army. The Kremlin denied having a role in the plane crash. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, said an absolute lie. And the denials were repeated by Russia's foreign minister and the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. At first, the Russian government has not confirmed the identity of the 10 bodies, but Prigozhin and Dmitry Utkin, his right-hand man, have been listed as passengers. But after victims' DNA analyzation, on 27 August, the government has confirmed the identification of all the passengers, including the Wagner founders. After the plane crash, Putin has ordered to the Wagner fighters to sign an oath of allegiance to the Russian state. And some rumors, close to the Russian intelligence, said President Putin would have put in charge of the entire Wagner Viktor Bout, aka Merchant of Death, a Russian arms dealer, who has been called one of the world's dangerous men by Mike Braun, former DIA Chief of Operations.
Может быть, даже сказать моим девизом «Все это трудное время, не врать и не бояться». Это помогло мне.
Viktor Bout was arrested in 2008 in Thailand on terrorism charges and extradited to the US after 2 years, and he was accused to sell arms to the FARC, a Colombian rebel group, for use against American forces. Bout inspired Nicolas Cage's character for the movie Lord of War, and in 2014 it was produced a documentary film based on his life, The Notorious Mr. Bout. In 2022, Viktor Bout was released in a prisoner exchange for American basketball player Brittany Griner, who was sentenced to 9 years in prison for possession of less than a gram of hash oil, even though the standard sentence for possession of no more than 2 grams of hash oil is 15 days. Griner had been prescribed medicinal cannabis, which is illegal in Russia. President Biden said, "There's not much that happens in Russia that Putin's not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer." As a matter of fact, it has been just 2 months after the Wagner Rebellion, which has been close to a Russian civil war, and many Russians, as well as people abroad, were surprised that Prigozhin was still free and alive. What could be the consequences of this coup? Europe is losing a good partner. Niger is both a valuable supplier of uranium and one of the main backer of the war against Islamic terrorism. And this could be another step for China and Russia toward the conquest of West Africa, a new colonization. Furthermore, this global conflict between US-Europe and China-Russia axis could help the jihadist militias. And among these geopolitical scenarios, there is the Nigerian population, tired of seeing only poverty and exploitation in their lands and is desperately looking for someone who can bring stability to the country.